The night over the Drina Valley was absolute, a weight pressing down on river and ridge alike. Fog moved in slow currents. Our boots sank into frozen mud, every step louder than it had the right to be. The river itself was listening. The bridge revealed itself through the haze, iron ribs and timber bones, a trap waiting to be claimed.
Orders repeated in memory. Cut the crossing. Deny the butcher his escape. Nothing more.
Nothing more.
Nothing
less. Task Force Raven advanced without words. Alpha secured the near bank. Bravo measured distance toward the abutments. The medic adjusted his pack straps tight. He knew silence was temporary, blood would come. The commander raised his hand. We halted at the river's edge. The air was heavy electric. A faint crackle broke across the net. Not a voice, not interference. Enough to remind us the silence wasn't empty. We studied the bridge and saw a stage. We were not the first actors here. The plan promised control, but the ground whispered otherwise. We were inside someone else's design. We were Task Force Raven, a unit assembled from different commands, each carrying scars and skills honed through years of silent wars. Our history wasn't spotless, but it was consistent, disciplined under pressure, efficient in chaos, and allergic to all unnecessary drama. Our discipline was forged through relentless drills, night navigation, in sleet, live-fire shoots with fogged optics. Heroism was never the point. In briefings, they called us reliable under ambiguous rules. It meant we could hold a line where the map ended and the paperwork pretended we did not exist. The mission had a cold title, Operation Raven Bridge. The directive was simple: demolish a single bridge, isolate a butcher, and end his flight path. Officially, the mission was to disrupt retreat interdict movement and secure valuable documents. Unofficially, it was to ensure he never reached friendly hands or sympathetic cameras. Success meant a collapsed crossing and an intact team. Anything less would stain the logbooks with footnotes no one wanted to read. Intelligence warned of militia on both riverbanks, irregulars with scavenged rifles and winter clothes. The caution was generic, but the winter was not. A footnote flagged possible contractors of unknown origin, then disappeared under redactions. The sound of those redactions turning the page was expectation closing. The Drina Valley was our area of operations. The river cut between frost-crusted trees, a lampless town, and a bridge that connected two kinds of darkness, wooded and official. Night vision turned the world into a grainy argument. The fog always won. Radios ran secure, but we carried backup like a superstition. The bridge wasn't grand. It mattered because every other way out was frozen. He would come to it because he had no other choice. The butcher was no myth. He was a node efficient with terror, portable across borders, and casual with witnesses. Men like him survive by entering and exiting at the edges of verbs. We were chosen because we could move without commentary, low profile, quick setup, fewer explanations. The risk P listed: mines possible, snipers possible, civilians possible. The word possible did more work than anyone else. Briefs and reconnaissance photos didn't align, angles clashed, shadows refused to match. Either the sun was lying or someone had brought their own light. Our cohesion wasn't a slogan or a patch, but silent corrections packs rotated without instruction. Gloves passed when buckles jammed. Our unofficial leader was the one who checked the smallest things: battery levels, ankle wraps. The things he did had no name, but they prevented a paragraph later. The most worried man counted civilians twice, conserved words like warmth, and was never wrong about the distance to shelter. Levity carried tension differently, not with jokes, but with a raised eyebrow or a timed shrug. Trust was a small economy, one man lifting a sling over barbed wire, another zipping a pocket. We called it standard procedure. It was the reason we came home. We went over contingencies with a pencil and a cold finger, alternate rally points, hand signals if the comms died. The river kept moving, indifferent to our fate. Success looked like a demolished bridge bagged evidence. A footprint erased from the butcher's map. Failure was louder, attaching names to numbers. The briefing slid past that possibility like a car past a black turn in the snow. Fuel caches dotted the ridges. Med-evac was 3 grids away. Logistics only mattered when forgotten. If we found documents, we would seal them and photograph the seals to keep the lens honest. No fingerprints of any personal narrative. All evidence had to be handled impersonally, detached from the man carrying it. Our rules of engagement were a form of subtraction: remove their paths, remove their noise, remove even their tomorrow. Every action was a step toward a total erasure. The redactions on the reports sprawled like the night sky, hiding names and complex patterns. Astinban, but it was those patterns themselves that were the real witnesses. They would outlive any words. The ritual before moving wasn't a heroic speech, just a final check. A loose strap was secured. An optic cap was checked with a fingertip. Everything was done in silence. The only questions were silent ones. Did the maps lie? Did the enemy read the same page as us? These were doubts that could not be spoken aloud. Silence was an agreement with reality. And so we acted for the bridge, for the mission, and for each other's safety. If we succeeded, we would close a chapter of history. If we failed, that chapter would write our names in it. Either way, the river would record it all. It flowed past every border, a silent witness to our actions, carrying our secrets out to the Great Sea. We moved toward the Drina boots, grinding frozen mud, a rhythm too loud for the valley. Every crunch echoed like a warning. The bridge emerged from the fog iron ribs and a timber skeleton stretching across black water. Alpha fanned out across the near bank, rifles' low eyes cutting through the mist, their shoulders moving in practiced unison. Bravo shifted toward the abutment's boots, pacing measured steps, drawing maps in silence, each gesture coded by training. Above us, the sniper pair crawled to their perch scopes, turning arcs into geometry, stitching invisible lines over the crossing. When Bravo knelt fresh, gouges appeared in the steel plates, scratches too sharp, too new to belong to weather. At the base of the support, the medic brushed aside snow, a boot print sunk deeper than ours, pointing toward the bridge. Radios caught a burst, short-clipped, mechanical. A coded signal repeating itself in the wrong country. Fog pressed against our helmets, turning each breath into a white veil. The air felt heavier than its weight. The warrior lifted his wrist twice, first to check the time, then the compass, then to study the fog as if it could be measured. Levity offered nothing. The air was too thick, the ground too uncertain. Even he knew humor had no ground here. We unpacked the first set of charges. The bridge resisted each placement, felt like writing on a wall that held another message. Alpha relayed by hand signal, not alone here. A fist-to-shoulder eyes narrowed toward unseen watchers. Bravo crawled under a girder and found wires thin, deliberate, threaded under the decking. Not explosives, sensors. The net answered back, faintly acknowledgements swallowed in hiss. Code layered under static like a second language. Snipers reported shapes in the far tree-lined silhouettes, too straight to be branches. They did not move, but neither did they disappear. Time distorted. Every bootfall sounded like thunder. Fabric against fabric became an alarm bell. We reduced our movements. Then across the fog, a figure moved one step, one breath, then gone. Too brief for confirmation, too sharp to ignore. The warrior crouched, clearing a patch of snow. Another boot print lay beneath, deep angled, directly toward us. The medic stared at it for a long moment, committing shape and depth to memory, storing evidence no camera could reach. Levity exhaled deliberately. The sound gave the squad rhythm again, a borrowed calm in a place where calm had no right to exist. Overwatch arcs tightened above us, rifles overlapping like a net pulled taut. The butcher would walk into geometry designed to erase choice. Fog thickened, suddenly curling over the decking like smoke. From within it came a sound, a metallic click, precise, intentional. Our optics caught flashes, small glints of metal where none should be, either fragments or markers, left as signals. The snipers held their fire. Orders were clear: observe until contact was undeniable. Shadows remained ghosts until named. The plan had promised control, but the ground corrected us. We were visitors to a script already written by another hand. Charges were fixed to steel, but each placement felt futile scratches on a locked door whose key had already been turned. From the tree line, a red blink pulsed once, faint and deliberate, then vanished. Not gunfire, a signal. One soldier scraped frost from the soil and revealed wires running into earth. Not ours. Another system buried beneath us. The river groaned, sheets of ice breaking apart. The sound resembled voices muffled under water, half-heard words. The medic tilted his head as if to listen. His hand brushed his pack, then stilled, dismissing a sound no one else admitted hearing. We regrouped at the abutment. Our radios stuttered alive, coughing a clipped sequence none of us could translate. Then static swelled, filling the channel, drowning every voice, and collapsed again into dead silence. Boots on the ground are meant to confirm a plan. Instead, they confirmed suspicion. This bridge did not belong to us. We were not alone, and we never had been. The silence after the static collapse felt heavier than gunfire. Every man froze. Breath fogged inside masks caught by night vision as sudden blooms of white giving away our position. A distant crack split the valley a rifle round, suppressed but sharp chewing stone near the abutment. We dove for angles, weapons snapping up, but no muzzle flash revealed itself. Alpha returned fire into the tree line. Brass fell in steady arcs against frozen ground. Bravo moved silently, shifting to shield the demo packs, their shoulders closing around the charges. The sniper pair called nothing on the net. Instead, a flare of light bloomed briefly, an old field signal. Then came shadows, multiple figures pouring from fog, their steps coordinated, their rifles barking. Our world turned into fragments, tracers sparking off metal snow, exploding upward, the bridge groaning. The medic crawled low, dragging one of ours back. His gloves came away slick with frost and something darker. Another burst ripped through the fog, scattering sparks from steel. Someone knew the bridge better than us. The warrior tried the net again. The static had turned solid, no channels left untouched. We were isolated. Levity broke the tension with action, leaning into fire, his rhythm like punctuation. Then a detonation rocked the far end of the bridge, not ours, not timed. Pieces rained into the river. The sound was 100 doors slamming shut at once. Our mission to cut the crossing was already being executed by another hand. We exchanged no words. Every man understood the objective was compromised. Shadows pressed closer, firing in bursts designed to pin, not annihilate. They wanted us unable to adapt. The sniper pair loosed their first shots. Two figures crumpled into fog, vanishing almost politely. The return fire was heavy, coordinated. Whoever they were, they had their own overwatch. Alpha huddled near the abutment trading fire, their muzzles strobing light against fog. Bravo tried to reposition, but a line of rounds warned them back into cover. Whoever opposed us knew the ground. The bridge shook again, not from gunfire, but another blast. Support screamed, bolts tearing like bone. We realized the enemy wasn't just protecting the butcher's retreat, they were rewriting the terrain. The medic hissed, working in silence on another downed man, his movements as precise as rifle drills. A shadow broke through the fog, rushing the medic's position. It was cut down by Alpha. The warrior pulled at his map. Landmarks no longer matched, the enemy had already collapsed part of the span. Above us, snow fell heavier, blurring every shadow. The valley was erasing itself while we fought. Another coded burst cracked through the static, this time over open air. They were jamming us from within range. Our commander gestured hard, a signal for fallback. The mission was bleeding out faster than the team. Then through night optics, we saw him, a figure at the far bank walking calm behind the cover of others, the butcher himself. He didn't run, didn't flinch. He let the bridge fall apart around him like it had always been the plan. The sniper tried for a shot, but counterfire cracked instantly, forcing them down. Whoever shielded him was better informed. The medic screamed voicelessly through hand signals, another casualty, another man fading. The warrior finally spoke a whisper into dead comms, cut it now. We wired what we could, hands shaking. Charges slapped steel, connections made in chaos. Another figure appeared in our rear, an infiltrator already across.
Say again, hostile contact.
He was cut down, but a device slid into shadow, still blinking. The ground heaved. The bridge screamed as steel tore against steel. Our charges had joined theirs. We threw ourselves flat as fire rushed the length of the structure, ripping wood, iron, and concrete in jagged waves. The river swallowed fragments whole. The sound left only ringing silence. When the fog lifted, the far bank was empty. The butcher was gone. Our mission had dissolved into someone else's operation. Our role had shrunk to survival. The bridge was collapsing still, as if protesting its own betrayal. We gathered the wounded, counted the missing, and realized the numbers no longer balanced. This was never just our mission. The explosion tore open the night with a jagged roar, rolling through bone and river. Flames erupted, illuminating the fog. Steel shrieked as it bent, girders snapping. The bridge convulsed violently, collapsing with a chorus of sound. We hit the ground, lungs crushed by shockwaves. Snow and ash rained down, mixing frost with soot. When vision returned, the bridge was a wound in the river. But below it, hidden compartments in the structure were exposed. Boxes spilled out their contents, flashing in the firelight. Not local munitions, but Western military supplies. A sealed document flew loose. The medic grabbed it and saw an intact seal of an Allied command. The butcher wasn't fleeing alone. He was escorted by shadows armed with weapons provided by a secret ally. But beneath the broken decking, something else appeared, hidden compartments sealed into the structure itself. Boxes spilled open, their contents flashing in firelight. Not local munitions. Western issue, markings in English. We saw stamped crates with supply codes we recognized, but were never briefed on. Night vision revealed the stenciled warnings restricted. Inside one box, a bundle of sealed documents burst, loose pages fluttering like desperate birds before vanishing into the river. The medic grabbed one sheet before it went under. One symbol remained intact, a seal of an Allied command. The butcher had not been fleeing alone. He had been escorted by shadows armed with weapons someone else provided. The sniper pair relayed with urgent light signals more movement on the far bank. Figures pulling back in disciplined order. Alpha tried to pursue, but the river's fury made crossing impossible, a wall of debris and fire. Bravo turned to salvage what they could, stuffing fragments of documents into waterproof bags. Every scrap mattered. Levity dragged one of the wounded into cover, his face set like stone. His silence was heavier than shouting. The warrior knelt by the captured paper, tracing the seal with a gloved hand, confirming the betrayal already known. The commander stared at the fire, the reflection on his visor red as blood. Orders were useless here. Above us, a drone-like hum passed once. Someone else watched from higher ground. The river carried fragments downstream, shards of steel-burnt paper, a helmet that no longer had a name. We pulled security around the perimeter as if routine could shield us from the enormity of what we had uncovered. Snow fell again, softer now. The valley disguised its scars quickly, but not enough to erase what we had seen. The medic sealed the wet paper in plastic, pressing air out with both hands like he was holding life itself. The sniper pair withdrew, their eyes wide, not from fear of combat, but from recognition of markings they weren't supposed to see. We realized then the butcher was not being hunted, he was being moved, extracted. The plan to cut his escape had been theater. The real play unfolded beneath the bridge, hidden in compartments no one briefed us on. Our casualties lay in silence, each one a death with no ledger to carry it. Alpha's rifles clicked on empty magazines stripped. The sound echoed like punctuation to the failure. Bravo retrieved the last usable charge, disabled by the collapse. They tossed it into the fire as if to erase evidence of our attempt. The commander finally broke silence by raising his hand in the signal for withdrawal, a difference carved in doctrine, but felt in shame. We lifted the wounded, strapped them to stretchers, and carried them away from the bridge's corpse. Each step through ash and snow weighed like an admission. The river hissed as fire met water. It sounded like laughter at our expense. At the far bank, no enemy remained, only smoke and the ghost of a convoy already gone. The butcher's silhouette never returned. His path was sealed not by us, but by those who had chosen to carry him further. The medic whispered nothing, but his eyes followed the river downstream as if hoping answers floated somewhere below. The warrior folded the sealed paper tight, pressing it into his vest. He would not let it go, even if it cost him. We gathered in a hollow near the tree line, backs against trunks blackened by soot. The silence carried every word unsaid. The commander closed his map, folded it twice, and shoved it deep into his pouch. The map no longer mattered. The ground had already changed. The fire dimmed as dawn crept across the valley, painting the wreckage in pale grey. The bridge was no longer a target. We counted the living before we counted the dead. That is how you learn what the night has taken. The wounded lay in silence, breaths, shallow eyes unfocused. Bandages stiffened in cold, stained dark. One stretcher sagged with the weight of absence. A body covered in tarp, carried by hands that refused to tremble. Names were whispered, not spoken aloud, committed quietly to memory, never to appear in official logs. The medic's gloves were blackened, soaked through. His hands underneath were cracked and bleeding. The warrior sat apart, notebook own, scratching numbers no one would read. He recorded anyway to fight erasure. Levity stared at the ground, expression hollow. Even he knew some tension cannot be cut, only carried. The commander walked the line of survivors, offering no words, only presence which was heavier than comfort. Spent casings littered the snow like brass seeds, silent testimony to the fight. The sniper pair returned with blank eyes. Their rifles were intact, but something in them had cracked. Ash mixed with frost on our uniforms, leaving us stained in two colors, white of winter, black of ruin. Alpha's strength had been halved. Bravo limped with gaps in formation that could never be filled again. We lined our casualties in a row, faces covered dog tags, pressed into the commander's palm. The river ran fast, swollen, with fragments of wood, paper, steel. Evidence gone proof, erased by current. What we salvaged fit into one waterproof bag, torn pages, one stamped seal, blurred photographs. Too little for the price paid. The medic leaned against a tree, exhausted eyes closing for a moment that looked like surrender. We lit no fires for warmth. Smoke would betray us, and fire had already taken too much. The valley seemed quiet now, but quiet after battle is never peace. It is an echo waiting to fade. Snowflakes drifted onto the stretchers, soft, indifferent, blanketing faces that would never see another sunrise. The commander finally wrote in his field log, short entries, no emotion. He let the weight settle between lines. One man knelt at the river's edge, scooping water. It ran red for a moment before vanishing into clarity again. We shared rations in silence, cold bread, colder air. Chewing felt like an insult. Each man carried more than gear now. They carried the absence of voices, the memory of the bridge's scream. The warrior closed his notebook, tied it shut with string. A ritual of finality, though nothing was final here. Levity finally spoke one word too quiet to carry. No one asked him to repeat it. We prepared the wounded for extraction, wrapping them in tarps, checking straps twice. The smallest mistakes mattered most. The horizon brightened. Dawn revealed a battlefield scrubbed clean by snow. To anyone else, it looked empty. We shouldered our packs heavier now, with a weight that had no form. Each step away from the river felt like betrayal. The bridge was gone. The butcher escaped. Our team was fractured, and the silence that followed was the only thing left to take home. The valley seemed emptied by dawn, but the silence was not peace. It was a silence that waited for someone to ask the wrong question. We recovered a single waterproof bag. Inside were torn pages, a map fragment, and a seal that did not belong here. The seal was Western unmistakable. Seeing it made the bridge collapse feel like only the beginning of a sinister story. One page carried half-legible coordinates. They didn't match the Drina Valley pointing beyond our mission's boundary. The medic held the paper as if it might burn him. His silence pressed heavier than words as he understood the implication. The warrior pored over reconnaissance photos tracing shadows. The light didn't match the timestamp. The sniper pair exchanged a glance. Their scopes had shown them soldiers disguised as shadows. We whispered among ourselves, where had these enemies come from? Their rifles and radios were Western just like ours. Dog tags from our fallen weighed down the commander's pouch. He held them tight, refusing to meet our eyes. Levity finally asked what no one wanted to say aloud. Why were we sent without the truth? The silence that followed was heavier than the blast. The medic knelt beside a wounded man, rewrapping bandages that he knew would not hold. His hands shook from the futility of it all. Below us, the river carried more than wood and steel. Crates bobbed downstream, pages dissolving secrets scattering across the current. We knew recovery teams would arrive later and bury the fragments under the word classified, turning our trauma into a sterile file. Our official mission record would state bridge destroyed casualties within expected range. A clean line on paper that erased all the mess. But no record would admit that the butcher walked calmly under protection, not his own, a guest of a shadow power. No record would mention the Western seal, stamped on documents, a smoking gun that pointed to a betrayal. No record would note the coded signals timed perfectly with our movements, as if someone was directing us like pieces on their board. We carried those questions like extra weight in our packs, a burden that would never leave us. Why were the bridge's supports wired with sensors before we ever arrived? The question echoed a chilling testament to our preordained failure. Why did our demolition schedule match another team's to the second? It was a perfect synchronicity of chaos. Why did the butcher look less like a fugitive and more like a guest being escorted, his calm demeanor a final insult? The commander sealed his pouch with the evidence and gave no answers.
No luck
His silence was not a refusal to speak, but a choice to endure rather than expose. The warrior snapped his pencil in two, closing his notebook with rough hands. For the first time, he didn't want the record. The medic washed his hands in snow, but the stains clung deep into his skin, proof that water couldn't erase memory. Levity tried to light a cigarette. The wind killed the flame 3 times, and he gave up, muttering a laugh that had no humor. As we exfiltrated, the valley behind us grew quiet again. To outsiders, it would look untouched. But to us, it was crowded with ghosts, our dead, the butcher's shadow, and the weight of questions we could never ask aloud. The bridge was gone. The butcher had slipped through. Our brothers were buried in silence. What remained were missing pieces, fragments of a truth too dangerous to fit together, forever sealed in black ink.